about free will, it's the gift of God to humanity in order to... It's the gift of God to me, so I can find who I am.
It's not only so you can find who you are, but it's also so you can begin to understand love. Without free will, love cannot exist. You see, love comes as an emotion from the heart of an individual given to another individual. Without free will, there is no possibility of love existing. Because if free will doesn't exist, there is no desire in me. I wouldn't have a self-actualized desire to love you. Do you understand?
Yeah.
It's very important to understand this relationship between free will and love. Love cannot exist without the gift of free will.
Now I get it.
Yes? So every time you give up your free will, you are also giving up love. You are giving up the potential of you loving another and another loving you for being you. You see? So if I now give all of my will over to Mary, and whatever Mary says I do, then who can you love? When you love me, you're not loving me, you're loving Mary. Because I'm the one, I've abdicated my will to Mary, you're now loving Mary. You're not really loving me. Even if you think you love me, you're only getting what has been modified by Mary.
Even if I say I love you, I'm not loving you.
No.
I'm loving my demands getting met.
And she's loving herself, really, not me. So the issue is love cannot exist between us if I give up my will for Mary or Mary gives up her will for me. Love can only exist if I own my will, and a part of that desire inside of me is that I want to love Mary, I will love Mary. And then my will is being exercised to love Mary. Mary will then feel it as my feelings for her rather than feeling it that I'm doing something for her. She will feel it as my feelings for her. Can you see the distinction? And this is something that we need to understand with free will. Every time we give up free will, we take away from ourselves the ability to love. Every single time. And this is when people often ask us, well, what about God's will for us? The same applies. If you give up your will to do what you believe is God's will, then God can no longer love you. Because you've given up your will, you've given up your sense of yourself. God can only then love what she has created in you rather than loving you. When you own your own will, now God can love you because you are an individual. You are someone who can receive God's love when you are in the action of feeling your own will. And this is, I feel, a big issue for many religions. Many religions encourage you to give up your own will. Right? It makes me laugh when people say to me that I'm creating a cult. Because if I'm creating a cult, I'm creating a cult that has every single person in it has their own will. Now, to me, that can't be a cult anymore, because every single person is going to do what they will, not what I will, for them. Does that make sense? And this is very important. God created you to engage your will. God also created you to experience love. And if you engage your will in a loving manner, now you can experience many beautiful things. And if you engage your will to love God and receive God's love, now you can experience even more beautiful things. But it has to be with your will. And this is where I feel many spirits muddy the waters. They actually try to get you to think that giving up your will is following God. And that is not true. God would not give you the gift of free will only to take it away again in order to worship God. Can you see? Why would God do that? God gave you the gift of free will so that through your own choice you could decide to worship God if that's what you want to do. And God also gave you the free will that you could decide not to worship God if that's what you wanted to do. And both are available to you if you exercise your will. Yeah. And this is where I feel it's very important to understand that with regard to spirits. Every time you deactivate your own will, you place yourself in danger of being manipulated by another person. Whether that person is on earth or in the spirit world, doesn't matter. You are placing yourself in their hands. You don't need to do that. And you definitely don't do that on the divine love path. Yeah.
So it's like the analogy we gave of the crossroad earlier. And if you're standing at the crossroad and you go, God, which way is it? What's your will for me to go? God's not going to answer, but some spirit likely is, go left, go right, whatever. Whereas if you actively engage your desire and your action, which was one of the points that your guides all said to you, you take a step for yourself. Your will is engaged, and then your guide can give you feedback, which is not based on, no, don't do that, but, there's danger here or it's better that way, but you're still engaging your will. And there's a huge distinction that I feel I'm not probably explaining very well, but
I think it's
yeah.
The whole thing that Mary said, you're in a crossroads and you say to God, please tell me where to go. And if God created a system that you have to activate your own will, when you're going, please tell me where to go, God, how can God answer that question? Because to answer that question, God would have to break her own gift to you by telling you where to go. Do you understand? The gift of free will is a gift God's given you, and so God would have to break that gift and tell you where to go. In other words, you'd no longer have your own will to decide where to go. Now, God can't do that. God won't do that. And any spirit who steps in and does it is certainly not harmonious with God. They're out of harmony with God.